The city never sleeps. A symphony of sirens, honking and distant music fills the air. Among millions, John lived a simple life. By day an accountant, by night a dreamer. He longed for adventure, something more. John's apartment building stood tall, a monolith in the concrete jungle. He knew every crack in the sidewalk, every shop window, but tonight something felt different, a shift in the air. John fumbled for his phone, the screen illuminating his face with an eerie glow. No signal. He was cut off, isolated. A shiver ran down his spine. He felt a presence watching him. He inched forward, his footsteps echoing in the silence. Apartment doors lined the hallway, their paint peeling, brass numbers tarnished. A thick layer of dust covered everything, undisturbed for what seemed like decades. He ran his fingers along the dusty walls, the silence broken only by his own breath. The air was heavy with the smell of decay, a faint hint of something sweet and nauseating underlying it all. Where was he? Curiosity outweighed his fear. He cautiously approached the nearest door. With a deep breath, he slowly pushed it open, the rusty hinges groaning in protest. He peered inside, his eyes struggling to adjust to the darkness. What he saw sent a chill down his spine. The apartment was frozen in time. Dust-covered furniture huddled together like ghosts. A half-eaten meal lay on the coffee table, plates crusted over. A newspaper lay open on a nearby armchair, its date decades old. On a small side table, a book lay open, its pages yellowed with age. A handwritten inscription on the first page read, "To my dearest Emily," a name etched in a time long gone. Who was Emily, and what happened in this apartment? As he ventured further into the room, his foot knocked against something solid. He bent down and picked up a picture frame. Its glass cracked. The image faded. It was a family portrait. A man, a woman and a young girl, their smiles frozen in time. A strange familiarity washed over him. The family's faces seemed almost familiar, as if he had seen them before, but couldn't quite place them. He felt a connection, a pull towards this forgotten family. A need to understand their story. He moved from room to room, each telling a different story, yet all connected by the suffocating grip of time. A child's bedroom, toys scattered across the floor, a rocking horse frozen mid-gallop, a kitchen with pots still hanging from the rack, a calendar on the wall with a date circled in red. Each room, a snapshot of a specific moment, a life interrupted. The air grew heavier with each step, the silence deafening, broken only by the sound of his own heartbeat echoing in his ears. The weight of the unknown pressed down on him. He traced his fingers along the dusty surface of a grand piano in the corner, its keys coated in a thick layer of grime. A single sheet of music sat on the stand, its title barely visible beneath the dust, Waltzing with Emily. The name echoed in the silence. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking through a ghost story, the remnants of lives lived and lost swirling around him. The lack of answers fueled his fear, turning his curiosity into a desperate need to escape this place. The silence was starting to get to him. It was a suffocating, heavy silence, as if the very walls were holding their breath. He could feel his pulse quicken, his senses on high alert. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of dust felt like a whispered warning. He tried to rationalize his situation. Maybe this was all a dream, a figment of his imagination. But the dust felt real beneath his fingertips. The musty smell filled his nostrils. The sheer weight of the silence was undeniable. He continued down the hallway, each step echoing in the oppressive stillness. The doors, all closed, seemed to mock him with their secrets. What lay behind them? What other fragments of forgotten lives were waiting to be discovered? He reached for the doorknob of another apartment, his hand trembling slightly. He hesitated, fear battling with curiosity. Was he ready to face what might be behind this door? Or should he turn back, Run back to the elevator and pretend this never happened? He pushed the door open, his breath catching in his throat. The apartment was frozen in time, coated in dust. But something was different. On the coffee table lay a single object that stood out. It was a VHS tape, its label barely visible. Emily. His heart skipped a beat. Could this be the key? He carefully picked up the tape, revealing a date. A shiver ran down his spine. This was no coincidence. He slipped the tape into his pocket, his mind racing. He needed to find a way to watch it. Was this the missing piece of the puzzle? The VHS tape felt heavy in his hand, a tangible link to the past, to Emily. He had to see what it held. He had to know. John searched every room, every dusty corner, his heart pounded with anticipation and dread. He found it tucked away in a cupboard. An old VCR, its plastic yellowed with age. Cobwebs clung to its edges, a testament to its long slumber. He carefully carried it back to the living room, placing it on the dusty coffee table. His hands trembled as he connected the VCR to the television. He plugged it in, praying it would still work. The screen flickered to life, lines of static dancing across its surface. A wave of relief washed over him. Hope remained. He inserted the tape, his heart pounding in his ears. The VCR whirred to life, its mechanics groaning in protest after years of silence. The screen flickered again, then resolved into a blurry image. A family, their faces obscured by static, smiled out at him. John leaned closer, captivated by the images flickering on the screen. A wave of dizziness washed over him. The air grew colder. The family laughed and played in a sun-drenched park. A picnic blanket spread out on the grass. A red balloon bobbed in the breeze. The image sharpened, revealing a man and woman, their faces etched with a joy that seemed both genuine and strained. And a young girl, her laughter echoing from the television speakers, pure and untainted. Emily. John's eyes were glued to the screen, his breath catching in his throat. This was their life, their happiness, preserved in this grainy recording. He felt a pang of sadness, a longing for a connection he couldn't explain. The camera panned, capturing glimpses of their life. Birthday parties, holidays, everyday moments strung together like pearls on a necklace. Each frame a testament to a love that seemed unbreakable. But something felt off, a subtle dissonance beneath the surface of their smiles. As John continued to watch, a sense of unease crept over him. The smiles seemed a little too wide, the laughter a little too forced. A shadow seemed to follow them, lurking at the edges of the frame, always watching. He noticed the way the man's eyes darted nervously towards the camera, a flicker of fear in their depths. The woman, her smile strained, as if trying to mask a deep-seated anxiety. And Emily, her laughter sometimes replaced with a silence that was all the more unnerving. The idyllic scenes began to take on a sinister undertone. The park seemed darker, the shadows longer, the laughter echoing in the emptiness. A knot of dread tightened in John's stomach. Something wasn't right. The footage cut to the family inside their home. The curtains were drawn, shrouding the room in an unnatural darkness. The atmosphere felt heavy, suffocating. John could feel a presence watching them from the shadows, its intentions unknown. The tension in the room was palpable. John found himself holding his breath, his heart pounding against his ribs. The family sat at their dinner table, the silence broken only by the clinking of forks against plates. Their faces were pale, drawn, their eyes downcast. Suddenly Emily looked up, her eyes wide with fear. She stared directly at the camera, her lips moving silently. John strained to hear what she was saying, but her words were lost to the static. Then she screamed. The screen went blank. John recoiled, his heart racing. Silence descended upon the room, heavier and more oppressive than before. The tape had ended, leaving him with more questions than answers. What had happened to the family? What had Emily seen? And who was behind the camera, capturing their final moments? He needed to know. He had to find out the truth. Silence. The television screen stared back at John, blank, empty. The silence was deafening, amplifying the fear that clawed at his throat. What had he just witnessed? What had happened to that family? He ejected the tape, the plastic warm to the touch. It felt heavier now, as if imbued with the weight of the family's despair. He had to know more. He had to find answers. John paced the dusty living room, the silence closing in around him. The air felt thick, heavy with unspoken words, with unanswered questions. The apartment, once frozen in time, now felt alive with a palpable sense of dread. He ran his hand along the wall, searching for a light switch, a loose brick, anything that might offer a clue. He needed to understand. He needed to know what happened to Emily and her family. He had to find them. His fingers brushed against something cold, metallic, a hidden doorknob, concealed beneath a layer of dust and cobwebs. His heart pounded in his chest. Could this be it? Could this be the answer he was searching for? He pushed against the door, his breath catching in his throat as it creaked open. A musty smell wafted out, the scent of stale air and forgotten memories. He stepped inside, his eyes struggling to adjust to the darkness. The room was small, cramped, illuminated only by the sliver of light spilling in from the hallway. A single bare bulb hung from the ceiling, its filament long since burned out. Dust motes danced in the stagnant air, illuminated by the faint glow from the doorway. A desk sat against the far wall, piled high with papers and books. A chair lay overturned on the floor, as if knocked aside in haste. A sense of urgency, of desperation hung heavy in the air. John took a step closer, his heart pounding in his ears. He ran his fingers along the dusty surface of the desk, his eyes scanning the scattered papers, drawings, letters, photographs, all jumbled together in a chaotic mess. Each one a piece of a puzzle he was desperate to solve. He picked up a child's drawing, the crayon colours faded but still vibrant, a house, a tree, a smiling sun. And beneath it, in a child's shaky handwriting, the words, "My family, Emily." Beside the drawing lay a letter, the ink smudged with tears. It was addressed to Emily's grandparents, the words filled with a desperate plea for help. They were being watched, followed, tormented by something they couldn't see, couldn't explain. John's blood ran cold. This wasn't just a family frozen in time. This was a family running, hiding, fighting for their lives against an unseen enemy. He could feel their fear, their desperation seeping from the very walls. He had to help them. But how? He continued to sift through the papers, his heart heavy with a growing sense of dread. Then he saw it. A leather-bound journal tucked away beneath a pile of books. Its pages were filled with a frantic scrawl. The ink faded but still legible. He opened the journal, his eyes drawn to the last entry. The date matched the one circled on the calendar in the kitchen. The handwriting was shaky, desperate. Emily's voice whispering from the grave. "He's here," she wrote. "I can feel him watching me. He's always watching. He wants to take us away. I have to protect my family. I have to..." The entry ended abruptly, the rest of the page blank. John felt a chill run down his spine. What had happened? Who was he? And what did Emily mean by "take us away"? He had to know. He had to find the missing piece of this puzzle. John's breath quickened. The silence of apartment 404 felt heavy, oppressive. The weight of the family's disappearance pressed down on him. He had to escape this place. He had to get help. He stumbled back into the hallway, his hand shaking as he reached for the elevator button. The doors slid open with a groan, revealing the empty elevator car. He stepped inside, his eyes darting nervously around the confined space. As the elevator descended, the city lights flickered past through the gaps in the doors. The bustling streets below seemed a million miles away, a stark contrast to the silent tomb he was leaving behind. He emerged into the lobby, blinking against the harsh fluorescent lights. The familiar surroundings seemed different now, tainted by the darkness he had witnessed. The city, once a symbol of hope and opportunity, now felt like a hunting ground, hiding a dark secret. John hurried out of the building, his head down, his collar pulled up against the night air. He needed to get as far away from that place as possible. But as he walked, a chilling thought took root in his mind. What if he wasn't alone? What if whatever happened to that family was still out there, watching him, waiting for its next victim? Days turned into weeks. John couldn't shake the feeling of unease. He had to find answers. He spent hours online scouring old news articles, and then he found it. A grainy, black and white photograph. The caption read, "Missing, the Thompson family. Last seen on July 17th, 1984. John's blood ran cold. He delved deeper, uncovering whispers and rumors buried by time. The apartment building had a dark history, unexplained accidents and disappearances since the 50s. Online forums were filled with stories of strange noises and cold spots. Some claimed to see shadowy figures, others whispered of a malevolent presence. Old newspaper clippings screamed of tragedy. A young couple vanished, leaving a blood-stained shoe. A reclusive artist was found dead, his canvases disturbing. John realized Emily and her family were not isolated incidents. They were the latest victims in a long line. He believed the presence was still there, lurking in the shadows. John shut down his laptop, the images from the news report still flashing behind his eyelids. He couldn't escape the feeling that he was being watched, that every shadow held a threat, every creak of the floorboard signaled an approaching danger. He paced his apartment, his heart pounding in his chest. He had to do something. He had to find out the truth. But what could he do? Who would believe him? He was just a man who stumbled upon a flaw that shouldn't exist, haunted by the ghosts of a family he never knew. He moved to the window, drawn by the distant sound of sirens. As he looked out at the city lights, he noticed a flicker of movement in the reflection behind him. A shadow, tall and imposing, just out of sight. John whirled around, his heart leaping into his throat. The room was empty, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't alone. That somewhere, hidden in the shadows, something was watching him, waiting. Gone, vanished. The family from the VHS tape, the whispers in the hallway, the hidden room, all gone, swallowed by the silence of apartment 404. John never found the answers he was looking for. The police dismissed his story as a hoax, a figment of an overactive imagination. But John knew the truth. He had seen the fear in their eyes, felt the desperation in their words. He had touched the remnants of their lives, their hopes, their dreams, turned to dust in the suffocating grip of that place. The unlabeled button remained, a silent sentinel, a gateway to a forgotten dimension, a chilling reminder that some secrets refuse to stay buried, that some stories are destined to remain untold. Or are they? John's story serves as a chilling reminder that beneath the veneer of our everyday lives there exist shadows and secrets, unseen forces that shape our destinies in ways we cannot comprehend. The city, a labyrinth of concrete and glass, continues to hum with indifference, millions of lives intertwined, oblivious to the darkness lurking beneath the surface. But in the quiet corners, in the shadows of forgotten alleyways, the whispers persist. How many more families have vanished without a trace? How many more souls have been claimed by the city's insatiable hunger? How many more secrets are hidden in plain sight, waiting to be uncovered? The city holds its breath, waiting, watching. The mystery of apartment 404 remains unsolved. The questions linger unanswered, like ghosts haunting the corridors of our collective memory. But the search for truth never ends. Somewhere out there, someone knows what happened to Emily and her family. Someone holds the missing piece of this puzzle. A neighbor, a friend, a witness to the unspeakable. Share this story, spread the word. Let the world know that Emily's story is not over, that her memory lives on, that we will not rest until justice is served. If you have any information, no matter how small or insignificant it may seem, please come forward. Your call could be the key to unlocking the truth, the key to bringing Emily home.